I think there needs to be a fair amount of things in your life that make you uncomfortable, or at least they're uncomfortable while you're doing them. And then obviously the reward at the tail end is worth its weight in gold, right? Somebody asked me the other day, which is not necessarily uncommon in our circle of friends, but you're 46 years old and you're still going to BJJ or you're doing these events, And I'm like, well, at 46, like everything can be uncomfortable. Like all the dings, all the bruises. I said, I think, why do you do that? I said, because it's hard, and whether I'm proving it to myself that I still got it or whatever, the reward that you get after pushing yourself through a fair amount of discomfort, to me is worth it.
Welcome to the Asset Mindset Podcast. Do you find yourself needing change or struggling with change? Well, today's special guest is an incredible human being, been through a lot of changes, and he's going to introduce himself now. Say hello, Hoot.
Hey, what's up, everybody? Thanks for having me on, Dan.
Oh, it's a pleasure having you. So can you give us a quick breakdown in bio? Because you've done so many different things. I mean, you started off as a Marine and then sniper and working with different organizations, agencies. Like what? Tell us about yourself.
Yeah, sure. Well, thanks again for having me on. 1998, I enlisted in the Marine Corps as an 0311. I was on a security forces contract, which sent me to and eventually sent me to FAST Company, which stands for Fleet Anti-Terrorism Security Teams, or more affectionately known as Fake Ass SEAL Teams. If you've been in the unit, Duh. Yeah, focused on a lot of neo operations, CQB, kind of more of the urban stuff. It's a very dynamic unit. It was a pleasure to be there, especially as a very young Marine. And then off to 1st Battalion, 5th Marines when I got to the fleet. And that's what took me to sniper school out at 1st Marine Division. Did the invasion of Iraq and a UDP deployment with 1st Battalion, 5th Marines. So shout out to them. A fantastic unit. And then off to Quantico Sniper School for probably longer than I should have. And then a couple of unorthodox billets, and then over to the reconnaissance community over in Okinawa, Japan, and then I get out just shy of the 12-year mark. So that was the Marine Corps career in a nutshell. And then it was off to the support the various 3 letters, and then I spent a fair amount of time in GRS.
It's amazing. So you have some incredible stories. Some you can share, some you can't share.
Sure. Ask me anything. If I can answer it, I will. Yeah.
Wonderful. Well, what got you to serve in the first place?
Great question. So, extensive military background in the family. The Van Oostens. It's tons of Marines. Going all the way back. There's an Army guy here and a Navy guy here, which of course we're very proud of as well. No short of ribbing at the family reunions, But yeah, so extensive military back. I just always kind of grew up around it. Dad, all the uncles, my wife, her brother, my brother and sister. It was always kind of a family event. So to me, there was never any question in my mind. It's not necessarily are you going to do it. It's how long are you going to do it for, and maybe what are you going to do after. There was never any pressure. It was just something that I wanted to do, so I couldn't get there fast enough. I tried to talk the high school guidance counselor and principal into let me graduate a little early, which of course I was unsuccessful. Just calm down. It'll get here soon enough. You know what I mean? But I was in a hurry. So yeah, it's just always something that's been very, very much a family affair.
Wonderful. Well, God bless your family and thank your whole entire family for their service and what they've done. It sounds like you come from an incredible background. I've read a little bit about your family doing that and having a military history. That's why I wanted to ask. I figured that was a big part of your calling, or, in a sense, maybe even a rite of passage. Would you call it that?
Yeah, I could say that. It was you know, when there's so much of it at, the family barbecues and you name it, the Van Oostens are really close. Everybody lives very close to one another. So once again, like you're just always kind of outside of the conversations that are taking place, and you knew that crossing those, or stepping on those yellow footprints or finally crossing that parade deck was what was going to kind of make you part of the conversation now, where you'd have something other than questions to add to the conversation. Like I said, I couldn't, holding all of those individuals in a very high regard, uh, setting a good example. I just couldn't wait to be able to add to the conversation. And then, of course, you wanted to make sure that you kind of checked all the same boxes, or at least had the opportunity to check all the same boxes. So yeah, I tried to check as many as I could, just so I could talk more than anybody else at the family reunion, I guess.
Nice. Love it. So, obviously, you're young, you're hearing all these stories, you had expectations. So, talk to me about your expectations going in and then the realities of being enlisted.
Right. So it's never right. It's never exactly what you think. Where you can read every book and hear every story on the planet. And now the one with gray in the beard, kind of telling the younger guys, and gals. My children, of course, have a ton of questions, and man, it was, believe it or not, I didn't really have a solid conception of what it was going to be like past boot camp.
Hmm.
And so when I came to the realization, as ridiculous as that sounds, right? I thought it was a boot camp, like squad based style environment, or you were in combat. And I'm sure back in the day, with the Vietnam era and even guys, older than that, I'm sure it was that. So the concept of the fleet and the concept of not being like in that squad bay boot camp environment kind of came to a shock to me, and so when I graduated, I grabbed the old man who did his 3 tours, and I said, "Man, now what happens?" And he was like, "What do you mean? Now you're in?" And I was like, "Yeah, I don't understand what that means." Getting to the first unit was like, "Oh, okay, this is not what I expected." And thank God for that, right? Like, who wants to live in a squad bay for 20 years? You know what I mean? When I was 18, I thought that was the way to go, but yeah, thank God it wasn't.
Yeah, really. We all have these things that we think are perfect and ideal, and then we mature a little and we're like, ooh.
Yeah, yeah. Ever been wrong? Happened to me a couple times. You know what I mean? Like, thank God.
So now you're in and you're learning and you're deploying. What were some of the big lessons that you got that helped create your mindset and make you a stronger person?
So, uh, right. So where to even begin? You know what I mean? I had fantastic, I had fantastic NCOs. I had fantastic staff NCOs. Um, always, I attribute everything to always having someone to go to answer the questions, right? And fostering that environment where there was obviously a time and a place to ask those questions, but I always kind of looked at the older guys, or the guys that were more accomplished, and slowly kind of tried to pull that thread. Okay, what, because there's obviously a hierarchy, right? Or at least a perceived hierarchy. I do, what's wrong with the basic infantry? Well, there's absolutely nothing wrong with the basic infantry. That's the most important job, at least in the Marine Corps, right? That's the most important job on the planet. And I was very, very proud to be a part of it. But then I always, in the t-shirts, the black hoodies and the stuff like that, and the kind of reverence that the snipers and the recon guys held was, it's very enticing, right? And I think for me, in plain English, like, if there is a selection process, or there's a screener, or there's a tryout, then there's kind of that inclination to go see if you have what it takes to do that particular job. And luckily I was successful. So I would say the biggest lesson learned was the only time you fail is when you don't try, right?
Hmm.
And you're not going to get everything on the first go. Nobody does, or at least those people are very, very rare. I had a mentor of mine tell me one time, he's like, "Hey, you're not going to breeze through everything. Something is going to get you, and that's okay." Like, we have this mindset that failure is not an option, and that's true, right? But the only real to me, the only real failure is not attempting it, or being afraid, not having the kind of the gumption to say, hey, not being successful is not failure. Not trying is failure to me, anyways.
I like
So that
that.
was probably the biggest thing.
Yeah, I like that. I try and coach people that all the time. You know, you have to try. And if you try and fail, you're actually not failing, you're learning, you're gaining
Yep.
experience, you know. The real failure is exactly what you said, not trying.
Hmm.
So I want to key in too, because you mentioned NCOs, you mentioned a mentor. How important is it to have good mentors or to seek out and find mentors?
It's imperative. It's absolutely, I think it can make the difference between, well, I know it makes the difference between being very, or at least moderately to very successful, depending on what your barometer is for that. It's very, very easy. I found out at a very early age, and I have to, like I said, thank those senior NCOs. Nobody's going to give it to you. Nobody's going to offer you anything. You have to go out and you have to seek. If you're feeling unfulfilled or not happy in your current profession, um, and you're seeking those more challenging or more unorthodox billets, you have to go after them. No one's going to come to you and say, "Hey," and throw anything in your lap. You have to earn it. You have to earn it. You have to show everyone that you're willing to do what it takes or whatever it takes, to get those opportunities and then hopefully be successful at those opportunities. So I would say that was kind of that came to me thankfully at a very, very early age, and I didn't come up with it on my own. I was told basically, hey, these things are out there, but this is what you have to do to get.
So true. Very well spoken. Thank you for sharing that. And I think people need to, whether you're in the military or not, wherever you are in life, you need to realize that you need to find mentors or get a coach. You know, I coach
Hmm.
people and try and help them, you know, improve their lives, chase their goals. You can always do something. You're not stuck. And I
Right.
think you're sharing that. And how has this been able to make your life more effective?
Yeah, I think my experiences in the service and having, eh, not to tell a boot camp story, but the first person to ever kind of plant that seed was one of our drill instructors, and he said, "Hey, look, be very, very careful who you associate with and who you hang out with." And hearing that as a young, not even a no shit Marine yet, just going through boot camp, I was like, "Well, isn't everybody here awesome?" You know what I mean? Like, I don't get it. Isn't this what we're here for? And that really stuck in my head. And I had the opportunity to, you know, uh, be careful who you associate with. I mean, that really, really stuck with me. And so it was like, okay. And you sit back and you look around, who's doing what, who's successful, who's getting in trouble, right? Who's not maximizing their potential, or at least in my optic, not maximizing their potential, and slowly just always trying to associate or gravitate towards those guys that were kind of pushing the envelope, always looking for the next higher billet or additional responsibilities or the next challenge. Because none of those selections or none of those processes are, as you well know, none of it is free. Everything, all it takes is all you got for all of them. So I would say, and your situation is always fixable, to a certain extent. If you don't like what's going on around you, seek higher ground. You know what I mean? Like, always be improving your fighting position, so to speak. And if you don't like what's going on, you have so little control of anything. The only thing I have control over is the amount of effort I put into the current situation or how I want that situation to change. I have control over that effort. So if I don't like what's going on, the first person that's at fault is probably me, and I need to fix that. The world according to me, which doesn't make it right.
No, exactly. And I hear what you're saying in so many ways because with the asset mindset, that's why I try and teach people that you are your greatest asset. They need to understand that. Like, you can't control everything, but the one
Mhm.
thing that you can pretty much always control is yourself and your mindset. So that's something that's incredibly powerful, and I think people underestimate it. Do you think people underestimate that?
1,000%. I mean, the first person in the equation that's probably at fault is probably me. So let's, get out of my own way first, as far as I'm concerned. That's I've carried that with me, since the beginning. You're in control of you, and that's it. And if your front porch is clean, so to speak, you know what I mean. You're probably doing all right. But clean your front porch first. Before we start worrying about or start pointing fingers or looking for someone else to blame.
Yeah, don't complain about the neighbor's yard, if your yard isn't mowed.
Yeah, yeah.
It's
Amen.
so
Amen.
so taking ownership is very important. Do you think most people are afraid to take ownership or they're in a comfort zone? What do you think people's issue is with having that ownership?
Wow. Yeah. Well, it's tough, right? It's very, very tough to be hypercritical on oneself, or can be, that humility, I think it's that double-edged sword. Like I used to tell the younger guys all the time, like, hey, your t-shirt collection, which we're all very, very proud of, myself included, we've got a closet full of t-shirts that we've earned that top, we're the toughest thing on two legs, myself included. But that doesn't mean you're infallible. You know what I mean? Far from it, flawed in many senses, right? And so it's very, very hard to, maintain some sort of self-reflective humility when ego is what probably got you a lot of those t-shirts to begin with, right? If that makes sense. And so I think a lot of that comes with age, age and wisdom, or the gray in the beard, turns out, like, I used to look at it as, once again, failure is not an option. And don't tell me what I'm doing wrong. Tell me what I'm doing right. And then I don't know when it was or what that switch was where, man, you're never going to do it perfectly. We're always going to strive to do it perfectly. Right. But don't be afraid to be like, how can I do this better? Don't tell me what I did right. Tell me what I did wrong. So I never do that same thing wrong again. So kind of that reverse psychology of how do we make this better? Not I'm the best there ever is, and I can make no mistakes, because it's just not reality. It's not even close, right? As we well know. So taking ownership can be difficult because at the end of the day, the first person I think you have to look at is yourself. What mistakes have I made? Where can I seek improvement? What did I not measure up to? Once again, weighing that scale. Hey, here's the things that I did right. Here's the things that I can improve on. And I think that's hard for people sometimes, because at the end of the day, you're kind of shining that spotlight on yourself.
Yeah, and I think people can shine that spotlight almost too much that they beat themselves down and start
That's a fair
feeling
point.
negatively. And I think people need to be able to do that, but give themselves grace. Like you said,
Yes.
understand that we all make mistakes. Like
All the time.
nobody's perfect, right?
Yeah. Yeah. All the time. Yeah. Yeah, we were, I spent the weekend with some incredible individuals and they all echoed the same thing, a handful of Medal of Honor winners. And we were sitting around, telling stories, and uh, let me tell you how I did it wrong, not how I did it right. You know what I mean? Because that's where we learn and that's where we grow as a community and so on and so forth. And so, and I think once again, it all comes back to humility, that strong sense of, everybody's worth a cup of coffee. There's and you always need to seek some sort of self-improvement, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think people need to always be growing. Like you even mentioned, it's an infantry thing. Always improve your fighting position. Like you need to be doing that in your life. If you're not improving or working on yourself or for your life right now or your goals or dreams, you're just wasting time. And time is
Mhm.
our most valuable asset. It flies by. You talked about when you were younger and, how you felt and thought, and then it's like, holy crap. Next thing you know, you're 40, then you're 50. And it's like, I don't know how the hell I got here. I mean, how am I in my 50s now? This is bullshit.
Yeah, yeah. Where did it go? Yeah.
Yeah.
I had a
So
teammate once I had a tea not to cut you off, I had a teammate once say, you can't buy a second of time with a pound of gold, so don't waste it. Don't you should, to your point, you should always be, you know, seeking that higher ground and or, self improvement, which I think we all struggle with. Nobody does that perfect either, right? It's a struggle. It's a constant calibration. There's times where I'm doing things correctly, and there's times where I'm not. Every now and again, you got to jerk a knot in your own chain.
No, absolutely, and I think a big part of it is balance too. Like, you wanna be humble, but you don't wanna beat yourself up. You wanna spend your
Hmm.
time on certain things, that you gotta do and pay the bills, and then there's other things you wanna do, but you need to find the balance, and I know myself, I struggle, I got a farm, I got so many things I'm trying to do. I got cows, chickens, bees. I'm a father of three, kids are homeschooled. And it feels like we're all juggling, but I think structure really helps make those things balance. What have you found for structure that's helped you in life?
And having a solid family structure, as you just illustrated. I lean heavily on my wife, who was a Marine 14 years. She kind of keeps me sane, or at least lets me know when I'm, getting off azimuth. you know. Um, she's I'd be lost without her. She's kind of my rock. And then routine. And when I say routine in the sense of, whatever that is, and all of us, I think, are one of our core qualities is selflessness. We're very anxious to give of ourselves and to make sure that whether it's our teammates or our family members or, you know whomever, people in need, it's kind of that, hey, send me, right? We've all thought that, and that's why we're, went to the places where we went, right? But you can't negate yourself either, right? So it's almost like, hey, leaders eat last, and all of those things, right? But you got to take care of you first, because if you're not at 100, you're not necessarily any good to anybody else either. If that makes sense, right? So for me, it's whether it's physical exercise, meditation, the journaling, steering away from things that don't necessarily serve me, which are prevalent in our communities. The self-medication, the doom scrolling, the social media, trying to steer away from those things, or at least keep those things within a moderate, consumption level. And once again, kind of focusing on the things that do serve you in a positive way, right? Whatever that is, right? um don't let the negative stuff, don't let the scales tip too much, right? Which I'm sure we all have in some way, shape, or form. That's part of the daily struggle.
Absolutely, and we all struggle, and I think you're right on, like, doing things that are positive. Well, what are some positive habits that you found that helps keep you regulated or keeps you on track other than your wife being like, "Hey, dummy."
Yeah. Well, none of it's epiphal, right? I really enjoy jujitsu, which of course, I always tell people, I'm like, hey, if I win the lottery tomorrow, there will be signs, and it won't be the Maserati. It'll just be like every social media post you'll see, I'll just live in the local BJJ gym. I really, really enjoy it, but schedule in this, and probably a fair lack of discipline, keeps me out of there. So I get in as often as I can. I really enjoy physical exercise, hunting, when it's the season up here in Northern Illinois. And then obviously spending time with family. That's obviously key, but the things running the podcast, the Nomadic Research Podcast, that I have found immense fulfillment in that, in a positive sense. So the negative things, you just try and keep those things in check and make sure, like I said, there's more checks in the positive box than there is in the negative.
I like that. Yeah, definitely. You wanna balance things because there's gonna be checks on both sides. People need to understand that,
Mhm,
and
mhm.
work on the balance, and so you're more leaning to the positive or the right side. Who you're fantastic. And I wanna now you talked about being physically inactive. What's some, like, crazy things you've done? Maybe climb mountains or something like that? Or you ever
Yeah,
do anything like
yes.
that?
Who's squealed? Who squealed? No. Yeah, we just got done with the Mount Kilimanjaro hike. Shout out to Ultimate Kilimanjaro. They were fantastic. Yeah, my wife and I celebrating our 25th anniversary, which was last October. She's, let's do something crazy, right? So we had a teammate and his wife that we're very good friends with. They happened to call us up right as we were kind of throwing shit up on the operational board, saying, what are we, how are we going to do this? And they said, hey, we've booked. And I said, we're in, and it was an incredible experience. It was just awesome. I can't recommend it enough. Yeah, it was a good time. Being at the top was pretty surreal. Yeah, it was everything you'd expect. Some surprises, but yeah, it was a good time.
So how'd you prepare for something like that? Did you just start hiking and climbing?
Good luck. Yeah, this is listen up, kids. Yeah, there's a way to prepare for this, and it's not what I did. All right. Uh, yeah, it's not what I did. Yeah, I bought a weighted vest. I got a 50-pound vest and tried to get out as much as possible. Northern Illinois isn't known for its mountainous, aspects. So the treadmill and the 50-pound vest was about as much best as I could do. And then after the first day, I thought, you've done it to yourself again. This is going to suck. You are woefully unprepared for this once again. And but yeah, just had to knock the rust off on day one, and then after that, it was smooth sailing. It was I think your body kind of remembers it. You know what I mean? Your body kind of, oh, okay, I remember doing this quite often. And so yeah, like I said, kind of had to drink a little water on that first day and have a positive mental attitude, and then it was absolutely just a blast from day two on out. Minus the weather. The weather was challenging. I tell everybody that's asked, I'm like, it was a steady six as far as like the physical aspects go, but it was a real logistical challenge. It was 38 to 40, mid 40s and raining the entire time. So
Oof.
it became yeah. I told the missus, like, we got in the tent after day two, I said, we have a legitimate, logistical issue here. If we don't figure out a way to stay dry, we're going to be in trouble,
Mhm.
So quick gear configuration or reconfiguration, and then and we were off to the races. It was badass.
That sounds amazing, and what a memorable experience, doing something like that. Can you talk about passion and purpose? Because it sounds like you had a lot of passion for this and doing. How does that re-energize somebody in your spirit?
It's are you talking about Mount Kilimanjaro itself or
Yeah, it
specifically?
can be that
Yeah.
or just, pushing that in relationship to life.
I think anytime that once again, the world according to me, I think there's a fair amount, I think challenge or meeting, being uncomfortable, being uncomfortable is good for you, in my opinion. If it's just like there is with the positive and negative balance, I think there needs to be a fair amount of things in your life that make you uncomfortable, or at least they're uncomfortable while you're doing them, and then obviously the reward at the tail end is worth its weight in gold, right? Somebody asked me the other day, which is not necessarily uncommon in our circle of friends, but you're 46 years old and you're still going to BJJ, or you're doing these events, and I'm like, well, at 46, like everything can be uncomfortable, like all the dings, all the bruises, I said, I think, why do you do that? I said, because it's hard, and whether I'm proving it, to myself that I still got it or whatever, like the reward that you get after pushing yourself through a fair amount of discomfort, to me is worth it. And I think should be done, to a certain extent. Yeah, I think you need to do hard things, or at least attempt to do hard things, because it's the reward once you accomplish those things. It's almost, I don't. When you walk out of the BJJ gym and you got a little bit of a limp and you got a jam finger and a bloody nose, it hurts, but it hurts in a good way. I just accomplished something that was difficult, or I just went, willingly pushed myself through something that was unpleasant. And I think people need to do that.
I agree
Almost like you
wholeheartedly.
can't enjoy the comfort if haven't been through the suck, so to speak, right?
Yeah, if it's sunny every day, you don't appreciate a sunny day. Like it's, oh, that's just the way it is. You're always comfortable. Then you're not gonna grow either. I think pushing
Right.
those boundaries and getting out of your comfort zone is what leads to real growth. Wouldn't you say so?
I couldn't agree more. Yeah, absolutely. It's yeah, as you said, enjoying the sunny days, right? Yeah, it's imperative that we kind of seek self-improvement, and I think a lot of those, the reward is just on the other side of the quote unquote pain or discomfort, right? So yeah, I agree with you.
So what if someone's afraid to step out or afraid to take the leap to try something new? What would you tell them about fear?
I think that's the shoot an azimuth towards that and don't stop. Look at the thing that you're afraid of, and that's probably the direction that you need to go. Obviously, within the realm of, you know, you guys know what I'm talking about, right? You know what I mean? If I'm uncomfortable, I'm probably doing something correct, right? It's just so easy, and especially, and I'm guilty of this myself. Like when you have when you've accomplished some of the things that we've accomplished, it's easy to be like, well, I don't want to say rest on your laurels or kind of be like, hey, I've already done X or proven Y, or, and that's great. And you have, like I said, you have the t-shirts to prove it. But, that was kind of yesterday. What have you done today? And I know a lot of that stuff sounds cliche, but it's true. And if you're done and you're comfortable, then be done and be comfortable. There's nothing wrong with that. There's going to come a time, right? I just haven't. I'm not there yet. So I'm continuously, trying to. Hey, is that gonna be terrible? I'm in. you know.
It might
That sounds
it
like a
might have
horrible
something to do
idea.
with
I'm on.
psyche.
Yeah.
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 Yeah, I wonder what your psyche val was, or all of ours, really. Like,
Well,
"Hey,
the
we're gonna
first three.
volunteer to jump out of a good airplane. We're gonna do
Yeah.
this
Right.
or that, and I wanna be cold, wet, tired, and hungry, and I'm
Yeah.
volunteering."
Why am I doing this? Why am I doing this? Yeah. I'm
Yeah.
involved with the First Battalion, Fifth Marine Association. To our point, to our conversation, they've got an annual Yomp in Scotland that's coming up, and it's I think 54 miles in 24 hours. And I said that sounds absolutely grueling. I cannot wait. It's gonna be great. I can't. It's gonna be awful, but at the end of it, it's gonna be a good time.
Yeah, and the bond that you build with people when you go through something like that, I think that gets underestimated if people have never been a part of something like that. But whether it's, going through a selection process, you just climbed a mountain, Kilimanjaro. And those people that you're with and the bonds you build or the relationships that are created through going through hardship
Mhm.
is incredible. And I think people don't realize, it's not just doing something hard, it's about building things too.
Correct. Yeah. And this came up. I think there was roughly 12 of us, a very mixed bag, and an incredible group of people if they listen and watch this. And it took about, the first day before just through that communal suffering, the communal suffering and of hiking for that amount of time, day after day, instantly clicked up. Like I said, it took us about 12 hours to start busting each other's chops and really, come together as a group, and very, very supportive of each other, so on and so forth. And this came up. They're like, why does it feel like we've known each other forever? And I'm like, well, it's because we're suffering together,
Mm,
and there's something special about that, your selection class, your platoon, what, and once again, that level of suffering or that level of discomfort is obviously very much an individual perspective. If the worst thing you've ever had is a stub toe, then that's the worst day you've ever had, right? And there was more than a few stub toes from start to finish of climbing that mountain. So yeah, it was amazing. And like you said, that group effort of people are struggling together. um I don't think there's anything that can equate to it. I really don't. And you're gonna have some people in the group that are having good days, some people that are having bad days, and you come together. It was pretty special. It was pretty cool.
Yeah, I think people need to put themselves out there in environments where there are groups of good people and do something and get out there. It can be life changing. I know my wife and I go to Guatemala, and every time we've gone and the group of people, like you're saying, your trip, you just had the bonding. So if you're out there and you're feeling alone, go do something hard. Go do a
Absolutely.
challenge, go do something where you're involved with other people, like-minded people, and you're gonna grow, you're gonna learn, you're gonna be inspired. Like, I'm sure there's a few people on that trip that inspired you, right?
Without a doubt, yeah, it was, with and kinda 2 parts to that, right? There was, incredible people, and I'm naturally inquisitive, so, and I thought for sure we were gonna be the oldest people there at 46, and it wasn't even close. We were kinda middle of the pack, and so watching, people that had 10, 20 years on me, watching them kind of, crush it as far as I'm concerned. I'm like, you ever want to get humbled, go do something like that, or say nothing about the Sherpas, the people that were
Mhm.
obviously you think you're tough. Spend 1 minute was one of those guys, or gals for that matter. Just a different breed of human going up and down that mountain continuously, so it was very, very humbling, very rewarding in that sense. And yeah, being able to sit down and pick, we had plastic surgeons, we had naval officers, we had Australian commercial pilots, and so there was no shortage of learning, from that group of professionals, as you got nothing to do besides suck wind and, talk to each other as you're hiking for 9 days.
No, that's man, I can only imagine. I mean, I've had my own suck fests in life and different things, so I understand that and the bonding, but what an experience, especially when you get total strangers and by the end, like you are bonded for life. It's incredible. So powerful.
It's We had 2 people in the group, obviously, I won't use their names, but we had 2 people in the group that had no shit, never been in a tent, never camped in their life, and, I about broke my neck when I was like, "Way to go big right off the bat." I'm like, "You guys are awesome." Like, holy shit, like, did you just throw a dart at the good idea map and, and they crushed it, it was
Wow.
incredible. I could not believe it. It's like, "Hey, I've never even seen water. I'm gonna, free swim the Atlantic." It was incredible, Never been in a tent. Let's do this,
Wow. Wow, yeah, that's next level. Talking about drinking from a fire hose, like
I
indoctrination by
couldn't believe it.
fire.
I could
Never
not
been
believe
in
it.
it.
And they just instantly, I was like, "You guys, that takes some real,
Yeah.
gumption. Like, that's badass."
Totally badass.
Yeah.
And that right there, I'm glad you mentioned that. So anybody that's
Yeah.
out there, you like, oh, I can't, or I've never done something before. This is a prime example. These people never even been in a tent before, and they went out there and they made it happen. And that's what you need to do in life. You just got to get out there, start moving, and make things happen. And speaking of things,
Yeah.
hey, be positive right now. Give us a like, follow, subscribe, go in the description, and you can find more about Hoot, what he's doing, his organizations, nomadic research, all the things. So getting back to it, take it, Hoot.
Yeah, they're just, there is no I can't. I've either tried it or I haven't, I mean, obviously there's going to be some circumstances, you know what I mean? There is no I can't. I've either tried this or I haven't. And I think I can't should just be stricken, from the vocabulary, within reason, obviously, but yeah, man, it's yeah, seek self-improvement, seek higher ground. You're never finished, you never stop growing, all that good stuff. And every day's not going to be a home run, but you just got to keep pushing, no matter what.
So, with all the things you've done in the years, What was the hardest for you to transition from or let go of?
I would say letting go of the identity, but I want to word this correctly. Getting out of the service and going into the contracting realm. Once I left contracting, which was last February, was kind of shedding that identity. Oh, that if I wasn't a Marine, if I wasn't a recon Marine, if I wasn't a sniper, if I wasn't a, special operator, whatever you want to call it, that I was going to be nothing. That the things that I did on a daily basis defined who I was, and obviously to a certain extent they do, but it doesn't, kind of shedding that old skin. And I had the privilege of going through some of the experimental treatments that I know Denny talks about a lot, where, going down to Mexico, going through the Ibogaine and the DMT, through vets. So shout out to vets. Really kind of opened up my aperture and showed me that, hey man, you did all those things. They're obviously, you can be proud of doing all those things, and you should be, but they don't necessarily define who you are today and who you could be tomorrow, next week, a year from now, what have you. And to sum it up kind of in one, story, the counselor that I was working with, he asked me a question, and I talk about this on the show, or shows that I go on. He says, "Hey man, if you were to die tomorrow, what would it say on your tombstone?" And it really kind of set me back, because I go, "Well, I've never thought about that before." And I said, "I'm gonna have to think about it." And he goes, "Well, I can answer for you." And Marine, recon, sniper, kind of the highlight reel, right? And I said, "Yeah, it would say all those things. I did all those things. Of course, it would say that." And he goes, "Yeah, but what could it say?" And so in other words, and it really, like I said, like I will take that to my grave, or as long as I've got, before Alzheimer's kicks in, I got, I'll remember that for as long as I can remember things. Where, though, once again, those are things that you did. You should be very, very proud of those. No one can ever take them away from you. But that was then, and there's still a now, and there's still a tomorrow. So let's turn the page on that, so to speak, and kind of find new purpose, find a new drive, find new goals, new aspirations, new challenges. And that was really the that was kind of the pivotal point, for me. It was like, okay, yep, that was then, this is now. And then is always going to be right there. Reach back and touch it, as we do every day. But there's today, there's tomorrow, and there's where you want to be in the future, right? And so if those things that you did in the past are holding you up, then you kind of need to, you need to drop that pack, which is counterintuitive to what we've been told, right? So it takes so much for the lapel pin that you're wearing, all the communities that, like, it takes everything that you got. It's not a job, it's a lifestyle, right? Hopefully you would agree with that, or at least,
Oh, yeah.
and once, you know once you're done, um I think you need to take those same things that were inside of you, and the practices and the grit and the never quit attitude that you had to have to earn those t-shirts, so to speak, and find something else to apply them to. You know what I mean? And whatever that is, it's the same things that made you successful in your military service and your contracting or whatever have you. It's a winning formula, right? Just apply it to something else, you know?
Absolutely. You got your tools in your toolbox still. You're just now gonna build something else. You're gonna work
Correct.
on something else. It's another chapter in your life. And the great part of things that people need to remember is that you're the captain of your ship. I joke when I work with people, you know, you are not a tree. You can move. You can change your environment. You can do things. You're not stuck and just planted in one spot, whether it be mentally, physically, career wise. You are a human being. You have this incredible ability to change, and you can change your thoughts, and you can change your mind, and you can change your path. You can change the people you're around. You can do all these things. And I love that you're preaching that you're a living example of it. Man, and your energy is great. I don't care whether you're a gray beard or not. I cheat. I got some in
Yeah.
there, but, just for men, I got a couple young girls. I'm trying to stay young and youthful for a dad. I started
Yeah,
over at
get it.
43.
That's awesome.
So,
Yeah,
mm,
trust me, I thought about it, but, household 6 said absolutely not.
oh, okay.
So, yeah, happy wife, happy life, all that,
Yeah.
yeah.
100%.
Right?
So one of the other things I want to hammer home that I like to share is, you're talking about, oh, the past is then and whatnot. Where you're at in your life, think of yourself in a car. You know, the things you did in the past are in the rearview mirror. You can't
Mhm.
drive and get where you want to go in the future if you just look in the rearview mirror. You have to look out the windshield. You have to turn the wheel and go where you want to go and make those decisions. So if someone was stuck transitioning, because obviously you've transitioned in your life, how would you help them find that next destination?
It That's a great question. Well, I think you kind of answered it, right? And that's a great analogy looking in the rearview mirror. I think it takes up so much mental bandwidth, um, looking and I'll use that, right? I'm gonna steal that. If you're constantly staring in the rearview mirror, there's only so much available bandwidth, right? And if it's just a highlight reel of Hoot starring Hoot, in everything that happened in the past, then you're not dedicating any available bandwidth to where you want to go in the future, right? And I think between that, the rear view mirror analogy and the kind of, once again, kind of stuck in that negative loop, and it doesn't even necessarily have to be a negative loop, just the, then versus now. Once you once you free up that bandwidth, the answers almost just fall out of the sky. I tell people all the time, like when I enlisted in the Marine Corps, I could not fathom doing anything other than 20 years. I couldn't conceptualize anything other than 20 years. And then right around the 10-year mark, I was like, I can't fathom doing 20. Like I have to find something else, right? And then the same thing happened when I went over to OGA. I was like, okay, this is just what I'm going to do for the rest of my life. And then whether, 12 years, 15, 16 years later, it's like, okay, now I can't get out of here fast enough, and uh and just that hard pivot, right? And well, what are you going to do? What do like, and we ask ourselves that. I ask myself, like, man, I can't imagine doing anything else. Well, you just have to make the decision. You figured it out up to this point. You're gonna figure it out again. It's you almost have to take a little bit of leap of faith, and
Mhm.
realize that you might not be instantaneously successful. It's going to be very difficult, right? And the first thing that you try may not be it, but you will figure it out because nobody that we associate with, or everyone that we've associated with up to this point is real good about figuring it out. I think we could all agree on that. You're going to figure this out too. And so I think a lot of times we want the answers. We want someone to kind of give us the answer or give us the path, and no one's going to give it to you. No one's going to, you know give you that A+ answer. You just have to let it come to you, right? And you might be surprised, if someone would have told me, 5, 10 years ago, hey man, you're going to be out, you're going to be running a podcast, you're going to be doing all these other things, I would have laughed maniacally in your face, you know, right?
Yeah.
And turns out, holy shit, this is a lot of fun. Like I'm having a blast. You know what I mean? The guys reach back all the time. Hey man, how and I'm like, hey dude, it's not free. It's not all sunshine and rainbows,
Oh, yeah.
but you figure right. If you want a challenge, follow me. But you kind of you find that path, you find that way, and if it's positive and it's good for you and the people that you associate with, it there'll be no questions. It'll be self-evident. And once again, like I said, just be very, very comfortable with failure, be very, very comfortable with discomfort, and you know, seek those challenges, and there is a path. There is, like, there is a chapter 2 or a chapter 3 or a chapter 4, if you decide that there is. If the chapter is over or the book ends, that's because you said the book ends.
Yeah, if you're still breathing, still standing, I mean, there's no excuses. I talk about that in my book. I don't know if you've heard of Stay in Step Institute.
Okay.
Romy Camargo down in Tampa. I mean, he was a ranger, he was Green Beret, warrant officer. We went through a course together, got to know him, and he got shot in C2, C3 and was paralyzed. He could just, "Oh, that's it, I'm medically retired, I can't do anything." He runs Stay in Step. Like, he's still there doing things, doing galas. I think they're coming on, I forget how many years now. I think it's like their 11th annual or so. It's incredible the work he's done. I talk about people read that are blind with Braille. People run with no legs, there's
Mhm.
prosthetics. It may be difficult, it may be
Yeah.
harder, but you can still do it.
Yeah. Yeah. Once again, 1,000%. I mean, it's you. it, you're just not done until you're done. And the first place, as we well know, this is where you'll be done first. As long as you're not done up here, there's options, there's avenues. You just got to find out what those options and avenues are. And once again, this is the first roadblock. If I can get past this guy, it's kind of sky's the limit, right?
Yeah. Yeah, and it's like Andy Frisella says, "How do you beat somebody that won't quit?" Like, you knock them down, they get back up, or they keep walking, it's like that person that's on whatever hiking the mountain. You fall down, you get back up, you keep taking steps forward, you fall down, you get back. Like, you can't beat somebody that doesn't stop. You just can't.
And there is there is, I'm so glad you brought that up, that there is that point, and I steal a line out of Batman. I'm like, there's the initiated and the uninitiated, and the initiated are the people that have found themselves either, that have willingly put themselves into situations where there isn't a quitting option. And I'll use my wife as an example, who, as a Marine, a very accomplished Marine, a physical athlete. I would always kind of, we would rib each other, because she's like, "Hey, you want to go do this marathon?" I was like, "I do those for a living," and of course she's like, "Yeah, well, you know what I mean?" Like, I go, "I do them with a pack on my back," and we're just constantly busting. Well, on the mountain, there was a point of no return, and she was not able to take the altitude meds. So on top of having walking pneumonia and not being able to take the altitude meds, her experience was much more arduous than some of the rest of the crew, right? And she found that new gear, and I watched her find that new gear. And there was a point of no return where it was like, "Hey, if you collapse again, where it's over," and we still had a considerable amount of mountain to climb. And I watched her. I watched her find that, you know what I'm saying, and realize that, hey, that quitting is not an option here. Like, we're past that point.
Mhm.
So you can quit all you want. You still got to either go up or go down. It's not, quitting is not going to alleviate anything. The pain is not going to stop. And I was so proud of her. I was so proud to watch that. Because we've all been in that situation where there's, "Oh man, I want to quit so bad," but you can't. There is no "I quit," and quitting is not going to solve anything. Quitting is not going to improve your situation. The only way through it is through it. And once you've been in that situation and are initiated, it kind of unlocks that, well, I got as many gears as I want to have,
Mhm.
if that makes sense, right? So yeah, it's
Complete
you're
sense.
right. You've got gears you don't even know you have. You just haven't pushed yourself to that point yet, and I think it's valuable and obviously very rewarding to see people, push past those limits.
Absolutely. You're speaking the truth, brother, and you got it, man. You get what I call the asset mindset. You understand, you're in control. Sounds like you have an amazing wife. I'm not the only lucky guy out there, it sounds like, because my wife's pretty amazing and been through some stuff too. And it is so incredible to share with others and be on a journey that is tough, but you bond like we talked about, you grow together. There's so many things that are beneficial. Yes, there's hards, and it's cliche right now, like you were talking about cliche. I'm going to use one: choose your hard. Choose it, because life's gonna be hard no matter what. I don't care if you sit at home on your couch every single day. Guess what? Then it's gonna get hard to move and get up and go to bed or go up a flight of stairs, or you can go to the gym and you can exercise, and yeah, it's hard, but guess what? You're gonna be able to move around and do more things. So choose your hard. It's so important. Again, I can't thank you enough for being here. This is just when I get somebody on like you, I just love it. The energy, we can feel it, the smiles, the laughs, and the passion. So before we go, I would like you to share any more passion things, nomadic research, whatever you'd like to share with the audience.
Sure. Yeah. Thank you very much. Yeah. So nomadic research, shameless plug, check us out at nomadicresearch.com. Matt and I are very, very passionate about our company and our products. Obviously, nomadic research podcast, which I'm having an absolute blast. Please come on next time you're anywhere remotely close to Chicago. I'd love to have you. And, yeah, I'm, I'm very, very passionate about watching individuals transition, because after the last 20 plus years that we've had, man, it's very, very, we have a very special group of individuals that, man, it's very, very rewarding to teach and guide and coach, right? And to be involved with those individuals as we transition out into, like I said, chapter 3, chapter 4, whatever chapter number that you want to be on, right? So I just feel very fortunate every day to be able to engage with individuals such as yourself and the community as a whole. And it's I feel a stronger sense of community now than I did even when I was in, right? Because in this side, or on this side of the community, from my experience, is, man, everyone is really anxious for everyone else to succeed and do well, and kind of all ships, or rising tide, so to speak, and it's out there, it's out there. Like, be anxious for the next challenge, be anxious for the next adventure, be anxious for the next failure, because like you said, like, all you're doing is learning as you go, right? Don't be afraid of it. Push the limits, all of it. And not every day is going to be perfect. As long as you keep going, you're doing the right thing.
Love it. Thank you again, brother, for being here. You're an amazing person. I'm proud of you. Keep doing the good work you're doing, keeping inspiring others. And if you need some inspiration or some help out there, reach out, hit me up, grab one of my workbooks from theassetmindset.com. I get the Mindset Method workbook that can help you out, create your mindset, or better yet, hit me up for coaching. I can help you personally. And always remember out there, you are your greatest asset, and own your power.